more for gas would stink. Choking on smog doesn't sound so hot either. The EPA thinks that the Front Range should pay more for cleaner gasoline, you and me. But would that actually improve the air here? Our Anusha Roy looks at why Denver has ozone problems that other parts of the U.S. does not.
We've talked a lot about how painful gas prices have been, the relief when they came back down, and now the governor is vowing to fight the EPA. Now that the EPA wants to require drivers along the Front Range to use more expensive reformulated gas by summer of 2024 because of poor air quality. Reformulated gas is essentially supposed to burn cleaner. The EPA says that it could cost 3 cents more a gallon, but that there are a whole bunch of factors that can influence how much people will actually pay. The governor's office said they've seen costs vary anywhere from a few cents to 26 cents more a gallon across the country. 9 regions around the country use this kind of gas. 2 of the biggest are LA and New York. But you can't make state-to-state gas price comparisons without taking into account different taxes and costs of doing business.
Meets a standard in California.
Same goes with how well it works.
Is likely to clean our gas up quite a bit more than the ethanol we've had up to now. But let me say also that the reason we have bad ozone pollution in Colorado isn't so much that our gasoline sucks. It's that our air is thin, which you can't do anything about that. And we have lots of sunshine.
Sunshine for smog to interact with and different oxygen levels that change how gas reacts with air, all resulting in ozone problems.
Denver has perhaps a more severe ozone problem than some of the other places around the country.
It's why Professor Scott Denning and Shantanu Jattar said while reformulated gas can help, it might not make the biggest dent in the problem in Colorado.
Cars are cleaner has meant that cars are now a smaller piece of the ozone puzzle.
So one thing the professors were saying that they're also worried about are the communities living around refineries, especially minority and underserved communities. And what this would mean for emissions is ultimately going to depend on how much oil is processed. Of course, all of this serious because ozone is dangerous, especially for people with asthma and COPD. And that's why the professors are focused more on changing how people commute and cleaner energy, the big picture stuff versus just this one aspect, Kyle.
So Governor Polis is trying to stall this idea of paying more for cleaner gas, which obviously is not what he wants around, on his shoulders during an election year. But is it possible that maybe the state figures out another way to give the EPA what they want?
The state is definitely trying. They have connected with the EPA, who said, okay, we're open. We're going to look at options. But, we're looking at summer of 2024, this happening during the summer months. And the governor said he's outlining all of the things Colorado's already doing to improve air quality, but also looking at ways to challenge this legally to buy Colorado time to get the state in compliance in other ways.
All right. Anusha, thank you. Boulder County is trying to argue that oil and gas companies have to use it or lose it, it being their drilling leases. The state Supreme Court is currently considering whether companies can be stripped of their right to drill at a site if they stop production there for a couple months. So this case began in 2017. A company called Crestone Peak proposed a big drilling operation in eastern Boulder County. The county said that since Crestone paused production a few years earlier for 122 days, they were working on a pipeline, that 122-day pause triggered a clause in their lease canceling production if they stopped for 60 days. The county then denied Crestone Peak's big plans. The company won this case at the appeals court level. Now it's up to the state Supreme Court, where the ruling would have an impact on similar oil and gas sites across the state. A wealthy oil and gas man is looking to make an impact in the governor's race. Steve Wells from Weld County is running ads against Democratic Governor Jared Polis. He's filling a void because Polis's Republican opponent Heidi Goodall has so little money she isn't even airing campaign ads right now. Prepare your eardrums as we truth test this ad.
Polis's policies fail voters.
I don't know what we're yelling about!
I don't know either. But I do know we can put this ad to the truth test with the help of the classic scene from Anchorman.
Colorado's high crime rate affects everyone.
That is a scientific fact!
It is a fact. Rising crime has a staggering cost. Direct costs like insurance and taxpayer-funded medical care. Indirect costs like lost wages and quality of life. A conservative think tank pegged the cost in Colorado at $31 billion in 2021. But many measures of crime rose nationwide. not just in Jared Polis's Colorado.
Young voters are getting crushed by Jared Polis's bad policies. Many are even finding it hard to put gas in their car.
You're with us, Ron. What do you think?
I think it's absurd to blame Jared Polis for the global increase in gas prices. But Polis did plan to increase gas fees by 2 cents a gallon. Then he delayed his own fee hike when gas prices went up during this election year.
Can we really trust Polis?
And everybody's going to hate us when we cause a recession.
I mean, come on, Ed. It's bullcrap.
Yeah, it is. The ad is using a video clip posted 14 years ago where a young Jared Polis talks about selling a business during the dot-com boom. Hey, speaking of booms, this ad has one more for you.
Help Colorado find its way again. Fire Polis.
Loud noises!
Vote Heidi Ganahl.
Perhaps you recognize the voice hollering at you there in the ad. That's the voice of former prosecutor and 9 News political analyst, now turned talk radio host, George Brockler. Prosecutors are going ahead with their felony case against Democratic State Senator Pete Lee. They admit they unintentionally gave the grand jury false information, but prosecutors say that was not their whole case. Senator Lee's defense team wants the case dismissed. Lee is accused of lying about his official residence and voting from an address where he doesn't live. Prosecutors say that he is registered to vote at this small house, which is actually within his district, the one he represents. He's not registered to vote at the larger house that he owns with his wife that's outside his Senate district. Lee admitted in an audio recording we got our hands on that he never actually sleeps at that house in his Senate district. The most diverse city in Colorado is getting a new police chief at a time when Aurora's police department is also under a court order to stop doing racist stuff. All 3 of the finalists for police chief are white dudes. I should say 2 of the finalists are white dudes because there's only 2 left. Hours after the city announced the finalists, Danville, Virginia Police Chief Scott Booth was like, nah, I'm out. I'm done here. So that leaves Scott Ebner, retired lieutenant colonel with the New Jersey State Police, and David Franklin, chief of staff of the Albuquerque Police Department. We asked Aurora about its very male and Caucasian group of finalists. The city says that it brought in a recruiting firm that specializes in finding great minority leaders in law enforcement. The city says 7 of the 21 applicants were people of color or women. Now Aurora is actually going to consider bringing back one of the semifinalists since one of the 3 finalists pieced out. So I'm like way too excited for this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign. And I think it's because my parents both taught in the rural school district where I grew up, and I knew how much they wished that they could afford to give their students the things that a lot of larger and wealthier school districts did. This week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports the nonprofit Nathan Yip Foundation's work, where they give grants to teachers and schools to help out rural classrooms. So in the past, the nonprofit has funded a playground for the Quiagat School on the Ute Mountain Ute Reservation. They funded an auto mechanic program in Peyton, down southeast of Parker. They bought musical instruments for a school in Byers and drones for the high school science classes to use out in Eads. Right now, the nonprofit is collecting new applications from rural teachers. And here are some of the ideas that have come in that I'm hoping that we might be able to fund together. There's a teacher who wrote in from Bennett who wants to start a wildfire science program to teach environmental science, and also they'd be able to certify their seniors as entry-level firefighters as a potential career. There's an art teacher in the tiny town of Joe's out east who wants to replace an old ceramics kiln so they can continue what that teacher says is their students' favorite part of class. There's a teacher who wants to purchase virtual reality headsets so the kids in her rural area of Colorado can explore the work environments and careers that just don't exist in their corner of the state. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 and I'll send you that link to donate. As always, I'll match the first 50 people willing to chip in $5. If rural school districts could pay for these things, they would. If the teachers could afford them out of their own pocket, they would, trust me. Together, though, we can make a bunch of these projects happen. Making it harder to overthrow American democracy from the inside. Democrats in Congress advanced a plan today, and you know the Republican running for Senate in Colorado says he's open to working with them on that. A new set of eyes watching us drive.
This is a proven solution for reducing speeding, reducing crashes, reducing serious injuries and fatalities.
Call for the state to lift limits on how drivers can be monitored. Next. U.S. House voted today to pass a bill that would make it harder to overturn the next election, which sounds like a pretty decent idea if you're into democracy. But this plan does not have widespread bipartisan support right now. The Presidential Election Reform Act would reform the Electoral Count Act. It would prevent state officials or individual members of Congress from overturning election results, like some of the attempts we saw inside the building while that was going on outside the building on January 6th. There would be a higher threshold to force a vote to discount presidential electors. All the Democrats in the House and 9 Republicans voted for this. The 9 Republicans, by the way, are either retiring or they lost their primaries. Here's where things get interesting. Colorado's Republican Senate candidate, Joe O'Dea, said to us that he would have voted to certify the 2020 election results. So we would have broken with some in his party to do that. And when I talked to him earlier this month, I asked specifically about this idea of making it harder to challenge the election. There's a similar proposal in the Senate. What do you think of the bipartisan effort to make it harder in the Senate to object to election results? Right now, one senator can kind of gum up the works. There's a bipartisan conversation about maybe you make it 20% of the Senate. Maybe you make it even more than that because it's such a threat to democracy. What do you think about that?
I think our elections should be, we should codify that. We should make sure that our elections stand.
So make it harder for senators to object to elections?
I guess I want to make sure I understand. You know, there's talk that it's easy right now. I want to make it harder.
The Senate version of the bill, we should say, requires 1/5 of each chamber to raise an objection instead of just one person. The House bill would require 1/3 of each chamber. City of Denver could get sued again for how they're clearing homeless camps. The new complaint says the city is not giving the legally required warning that workers have been harassing people who are living on the streets. Lawyers representing homeless advocates sent a letter to the mayor detailing what they say are violations of the city's settlement. The settlement says that the city has to give at least 7 days warning before a large-scale sweep. The letter says in the last 6 months, there have been a dozen sweeps without that required notice. In some cases, lawyers say people just got a 5-minute heads up. It also lists 17 times where they say the city trashed somebody's property instead of putting it into storage like they're supposed to. And lawyers say on 3 occasions, people couldn't get their stuff back from the storage facility because of mismanagement. The letter also accuses city workers and contractors of assaulting, threatening people living on the streets. The legal team's threatening to sue the city if those violations continue.
The final full day of the summer season, and look at this. Yes, the rain showers coming through, that cold front dropping our temperatures dramatically. Look at this. We're 37 degrees cooler than where we were at yesterday when we were hovering in the lower 90s for highs. Incredibly cool off to the eastern plains, and then even up in the high country, a little cooler than yesterday too. All of this moisture coming in from the southwest out to the western slope, Grand Junction, south toward Telluride, looking at some beneficial rain. Haven't seen much as any flash flooding is concerned, so that is a bit of good news. And the rainfall really beginning to fill in across the I-25 corridor. Still could see some heavy pockets late tonight into tomorrow, so the flood watch will continue primarily for much of western Colorado. Futurecast keeping the rain showers with us tonight. This takes to about 11 p.m. when all of that rain shifts across the northeastern plains. Tomorrow morning could be a soggy drive into work or school, but by the afternoon, a little bit of clearing coming our way. Finally, late tomorrow night, the storm system rolls out and the sunshine moves back in for your Friday and into the weekend. Temps tomorrow still on the cooler side, 50s and 60s around here, but look at that, nothing but sunshine. Saturday, Sunday, great weather for the Broncos game.
So anything we can do to slow down traffic will make the streets safe for everybody, regardless of how you're getting around.
In order to try their idea, they need a change in state law. That's next. You're just driving along and you see the flash and it's like, ah, dang, that photo radar van get me or did they get the driver 1 lane over? You could be going under the speed limit and it still makes you clench your seat in your seat, you know? State law limits where those photo radar vans are allowed. There are advocates trying to make streets safer who want those restrictions removed. Marshall Zellinger's back from baby duty and he has the story.
Denver Streets Partnership and Bicycle Colorado would rather streets be designed differently to force safer speeds. But in the meantime, they want to see photo radar allowed in more places.
Anything we can do to slow down traffic will make the streets safe for everybody, regardless of how you're getting around.
For photo radar to be allowed, it cannot be a stationary device like a red light camera. State law requires the photo radar van to be monitored by someone in person, and it can only be used in school zones, construction zones, near parks and residential neighborhoods, not on Colfax.
It severely restricts where and how local governments can use speed cameras, which hampers their ability to truly use them in a way that would improve safety.
Legislation being considered for next year would not limit where photo radar could be used and would not require them to be monitored in real time.
We are obviously concerned about traffic safety on everywhere in the city. But Colfax Avenue would be a good example.
In Aurora, Mayor Mike Kaufman just got City Council to approve a pilot program for 3 photo radar vans. 4 years ago, Aurora voters told the city to get rid of red light cameras. So why weren't voters asked about photo radar?
We were going to do the photo red light program at intersections. There's no question about it. That would be similar or identical to the last one. That ought to go before a vote of the people. This is fundamentally different.
I feel like this is just an extension of that same type of technology, and that this is not something that we should be deciding as a council, but if we want them to bring them back, go to voters again.
Aurora City Councilman Dustin Zvonek, normally on the same side as the mayor, would rather voters have a say first. But his preferred deterrent is to get officers mobile radars for their cars to be able to pull drivers over while on patrol.
If you're going to give somebody a legal citation, I think that it should be a sworn officer. It shouldn't be a box that's ticketing you.
We've heard loud and clear from the community that they want to minimize unnecessary interactions with police officers.
Here's the part we shouldn't talk about, but we need to. There are currently loopholes in the photo radar ticketing method. The ticket currently issued to the vehicle's registered owner. If you own the car, but the photo radar took a picture of someone else driving, you let law enforcement know, hey, that's not me, and no one pays the ticket. The legislation being considered would make this like a parking ticket where it follows the vehicle. Doesn't matter who parked the car, doesn't matter who was speeding. It's whoever owns the car pays the ticket.
Yeah, and we don't want to encourage people to speed, but the fact is there is like a threshold for which they won't ticket you, right?
Right, because it's not manned by an officer. It's a civilian watching these. You can only get the ticket if it's 11 miles per hour over. So if it's a 30 and you're going 39, you may get flash, but whoever looks at that ticket before it gets sent out probably isn't sending it because it wouldn't hold up right now. This legislation being considered would lower that after a year to 6 miles an hour over the limit.
Tighten it up. All right, Marshall, thank you. Back with Feedback from God next. This week, we're teaming up with a nonprofit to fill the wish list of teachers in rural Colorado. The Nathan Yip Foundation helps teachers and schools get the class supplies and technology they otherwise can't afford. And they also help on bigger projects like playgrounds and creating an auto repair program, Chromebooks for homework, and musical instruments for a school. The nonprofit has a new wish list from teachers, and they're taking new applications from rural schools right now. So let's see what we can do to help make education a little bit better in every corner of our state. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491. You can join me in donating to this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign. Pretty detailed feedback coming in tonight from upstairs. Nicole writes, "It's despicable you continue to lie to the public and push your false narratives. God will take care of each and every one of you who continue to create fear and share false information. I pray you all repent before he comes back to have revenge on the, we're getting deep here, on the satanic, worshiping, disgusting, and repulsive liars. It's not too late to change your narrative." All right, Nicole. Well, it is smite season. That's exciting. I'll be sure to wear non-conductive shoes. See you next time.